And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Rutherford Sports Network podcast. I'm John Thomas Hill. And I found out today that LeBron James was not exactly consulted on the recent decision by the NBA to hold a All-Star game after all. And he is none too pleased with it. And I'm going to look up the, excuse me, the news article. To quote him, he says he has zero energy and zero excitement about an All-Star game this year. He said those statements yet last night after a win over the Nuggets, and he doesn't understand why they're having an All-Star game. The league informed teams on Wednesday that it will soon finalize an agreement with the NBA Players Association to stage an All-Star game in Atlanta on March 7th, an event that it could also feature a slam dunk contest and a three-point contest. The showcase was initially scheduled for February 14th in Indianapolis, but the board decided to push that until Indianapolis' hosting of it till 2024, obviously due to the coronavirus. He called the decision a slap in the face to the players who had hoped to receive a break in March. He referenced the Lakers playing into mid-October to capture the NBA championship last season, a run that left them just under 2.5 months before opening the 2021 campaign on December 22nd. Quoting him, "Short off-season for myself and my teammates, 71 days. And then coming into this season, we were told we were not having an All-Star game, so we'd have a nice little break, 5 days in March from the 5th through the 10th. An opportunity for me to kind of recalibrate for the second half of the season, my teammates as well, some of the guys in the league, and then they throw an all-star game on us like this, and it just breaks that all the way up. So I'm pretty much a slap in the face." Now, earlier, Sacramento Kings guard De'Aaron Fox said Wednesday he considers it stupid to carry out the All-Star game in the midst of the pandemic. He's quoted as saying, "If we have to wear masks and do all of this for a regular game, then what's the point of bringing the All-Star game back? But obviously the money makes the world go round, and so it is what it is." Okay. More than likely, they're going to have their little showcase. LeBron James will probably decide not to attend. You might see more players decide to opt out of it, and it would be basically just a few people who would, just a few All-Stars. It may be more of a watered down. I could see the NBA deciding to not have the All-Star game after, depending on the backlash from this decision. Here's the thing about All-Star games. Back in the day when you really didn't have much television exposure for the major pro sports, All-Star games were an opportunity for fans to see all the the big stars across both the NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, and the NFL. You didn't have 24/7 sports news cycles and all of that like you have now. So seeing Magic Johnson play against Larry Bird in an All-Star game, plus seeing Western Conference stars that folks on the East Coast didn't get to see, was a big deal. Now you have so much coverage that you pretty much know who is who. It's not a real competition anymore. It never really has been. There are always exhibitions, but, up until recently, I'd say the last 20 years or so, there was actually quite a lot of pride on the line in All-Star games. You wanted to win it to kind of have a little pride in your conference and all that, I should say. But free agency in many ways has destroyed that because you know, it's easy to go from one conference to the other, and really it's not that big of a deal anymore. And some players may consider it, but part of that because they may like the competition in the Western Conference, or they may want to go to the Eastern Conference because it might be easier to get to the finals, because the Eastern Conference is considered weaker in the NBA than it is in the Western Conferences. The key, though, is that the NBA, if you're hearing a yapping dog, that's my stepnephew's dog. He got a puppy recently, and anytime the puppy gets left alone, it hollers. So he's gone outside for a bit to do something. I'm not sure what. So if you hear yapping, that's the dog. The dog is fine. He's just lonely. All-Star games once served a purpose to really boost interest in the game. They showcased the stars, and to a certain extent it's still like that. But in this era where you can watch every single NBA game if you so desired, you can catch highlights all over the place on YouTube, on ESPN, wherever else, it's almost irrelevant. And I think that there will come a time down the road when the players will get tired of having this all-star break, and they'll just decide in the next collective bargaining agreement to end it. The Pro Bowl in the NFL, I don't think any NFL player really wants to play that game. It's the end of a long season. Your body's beat up. Now you're going to be playing one more game, which, you could have a celebration for the All-Pro team and for the Pro Bowl selections and all that, and have a celebration like they did this year. And have it during Super Bowl week. But, do you really need a game anymore that nobody really watches, and the attendance is... I'm not sure how much the attendance is now because they've moved it back to the mainland. They used to be in Hawaii, and that was the appeal of it, was to go to Hawaii, a free Hawaii trip for the players and for the league and all that, and then they changed their mind about that once they saw the ratings were going way down, and they moved it from the week after the Super Bowl, the week before the Super Bowl, and it's not really generated that much interest since then. Now, I had an idea at one time to have the game played in the same stadium they're playing the Super Bowl in, and have the two teams who are playing the Super Bowl come onto the field before the game, and they would be able to watch the game from up close and personal. And they could cheer for their particular conference and all of this, and you could make it a ceremony to start. It would be the kickoff to Super Bowl week, essentially. The two teams would come in, say, Saturday evening or Sunday morning. They'd walk into the stadium before the game starts. They'd have a whole section where they'd walk up to and be introduced and all of that. And they'd watch the game and be able to even interact with the players on the field, the Pro Bowlers on the field. So, which could be interesting, most likely be positive, it may be a little bit negative there, which would make things interesting. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. But All-Star games once were awesome, but now the skills competition has more interest than the actual game itself. For the casual fan, yeah, there might be some interest to say, who are the new stars? I don't really get a chance to watch the NBA all that much, but those aren't really all that common anymore. If you're really invested in the NBA, you're already invested in it. Same with the NFL, with its massive popularity. Casual fans are still out there, but not like they once were before. There's a lot of specialization amongst fans now. It used to be, when I was growing up, where you pretty much, if you liked football, most people like football, baseball, and basketball, all three to a certain extent. Some people may not care for basketball, some people may not care for baseball or football, but in general, you'd be at least following the other sports, because the sportscasters on your local news station and whatnot would be showcasing all the sports. Now, there has been a move away from that, because back in the day, your local sportscaster would basically give you some local sports, but mostly it would be national sports. Now, they tend to focus more on the local stuff than they do the national scene, and a lot of that's because of expansion of teams to where, nowadays, before the Panthers came along, the only teams in the Southeast were the Falcons and the two Florida teams, Miami and Tampa. Now you've got the Panthers, now you've got the Titans. There's New Orleans obviously out there too, let's not forget them, but now you've got more specialization. You have fans actually having to pick, whereas before, I want to say that, I should say that you pick the local team. Fans in Tennessee will generally root for the Titans. Fans in the Carolinas will root for the Panthers. Fans in Georgia will root for the Falcons. Alabama, though, tends to be divided. But before all that, when it was just the Falcons in the Southeast and the two Florida teams, and of course New Orleans, you had more fans that would go for Pittsburgh or but Dallas, whoever were the successful teams, the Niners, the Broncos, whatnot. So back then, you had more of a generalization effect, where you had a diversification of the fan base. Now, with the NFL bigger, the NBA bigger, NHL bigger, and the MLB bigger, you have markets which have, like where I live at, you have a lot of Braves fans, which has been that way since the 60s when the Braves moved from Milwaukee to Atlanta. But now, there is the possibility within, say, the next 10, 20 years where you could see a major league team in Nashville or Charlotte, which could cut into the Braves' territory. And obviously, the Braves used to be the only team in the Southeast up until 1993 when the Marlins came along. And then 1997, you had the Tampa Bay Rays come along. So the Braves, for a certain generation, were the only team in the Southeast from 1966, I think the Braves came down, to 1993. So that was 20-some-odd years where the Braves had a very solid monopoly in the South. Now, there are certain parts of the South that got Cincinnati Reds games back in the day. You had parts of the South that got the Cardinals back in the day. And there are still some people of a certain age who are big Cardinal fans and Reds fans who knew those were the only two teams that you could get broadcast from. Now you've got the possibility within the next 20 years, before the halfway point of the century, where you could have teams in Charlotte and Nashville. And maybe even more than that. So, but All-Star games, I got off track, sorry. All-Star games, in large part, used to fill a void where you didn't see, if you were in an American League city, you didn't get to see the National League teams unless you saw them on the game of the week. but the All-Star Game was an opportunity to see all the great players in the National League play all the great players in the American League. And if you were in an American League town, you tended to root for the American League. If you were in a National League town, you rooted for the National League. Now, because of the fact that it's you see all these players play all these games and all the highlights and all of that all the time, it's not so special anymore. It's not must-see television. There's a lot of competition nowadays. It's not just, back when there were only 4 networks if you count PBS, the All-Star Game was something you'd watch because it was the only stuff on TV to watch. And it was a rarity, a baseball game at night, except, of course, ABC would have Monday Night Baseball during the summertime, but this would be a rarity because it would be you have a lot of casual fans would watch, and it was something you would build. It's basically the Midsummer Classic, essentially. Now it's interesting, but you're usually worried about the home run contest. The All-Star Game isn't what it once was. It's the hardcore fans will watch it. If it's in your market, you'll probably go to it or pay more attention to it than you normally would. But outside of your own market, it's a break from baseball. You notice it because you're not watching your team play. And for the non-All-Stars, it's an important break during the season to get a little bit of rest. Now, I don't really think you're going to see anything really change anytime soon, because there's a lot of money to be made in All-Star games for the league and to a certain degree to the elite players. But if the ratings go down enough, and they have gone down in recent years, the networks may decide, hey, we don't want this. And it may be a hard sell, So, what do? Well, first of all, the NHL, in my opinion, should only have it every odd-numbered year. I think they should have they go back to the Olympics. I think they're going back next year to 2022 to Beijing and have pros play again there. I don't know if they're going to do it but I don't know if they're going to do the World Cup again. They did the World Cup in 2016. They were supposed to do it again last year, but obviously the pandemic. But I think they should do it in the World Cup in even-numbered years during what would normally be an Olympic break. Have it like a 2-week competition and have a 3-week break. Let the teams kind of come together, select them in the off season, have some alternates if people get hurt, have some practices in the off season, and then have once the World Cup / Olympic break takes place, you have a week of practice. You have 3 weeks off, and the ones that aren't selected, you get a nice big break right there. You could figure out something to do. I mean, I know the owners don't like it, but I think it makes great sense for the sport. It generate more interest. I think the NBA really should consider it to a certain extent. But I don't think it's, I don't have any illusions that's going to happen because it's always money first and creative ideas a distant second. But, baseball, there's been interest of doing the MLB players going to the Olympics. That'll never happen for the simple reason that Major League Baseball will not want to shut down the league for 2 or 3 weeks and risk players getting hurt for the Olympics. And while that is possible somewhere down the road, I think baseball is more focused on the World Baseball Classic, which is supposed to happen, I believe, that was supposed to happen this year. But obviously, the pandemic coming along, it's not going to happen. They're probably going to move it to 2022 or 2023. And while that's all well and good, people want to watch baseball in the summertime. And I could see somewhere down the road where the players may opt to, in order to have fewer games, to have have Olympic competition, have the World Baseball Classic in the summertime for 2 or 3 weeks, and have that bit of a break for the players and maybe shift the schedule back from 162 to 154 or whatever. And during the years where you have the Olympic competition and or World Baseball Classic or World Cup, whatever you want to call it, you'd have even-numbered years. You'd have that long break. Odd-numbered years, you could have a longer All-Star break, a full week. And I've said, heck, play 3. Play 3 games. Give everybody an opportunity to play. Have the fans choose one game, have the players choose a second game, have the writers and broadcasters and whatnot choose a third game. You play all 3 games. If a team sweeps all 3 games, they get a bonus. If whoever wins the series gets an extra amount of money. If whoever wins, there are ideas, plenty of ideas out there, but the NHL did change their format to where the division, it's sort of like a mini tournament. I think it's like a 1-period tournament, something like that, where you have the divisional all-star teams playing each other, and whoever wins the matchups, Eastern Conference versus Western Conference, who in the 2 Eastern divisions would play each other, the 2 Western divisions would play each other, and then whoever won those would play to win the All-Star game, which I like the idea of it. And you could theoretically do that for the NBA and Major League Baseball to a certain extent. Have mini games and have a little tournament. But I think it works for the NHL because the NHL needs something to stand out. It's the 4th of the 4th league, so that stands out. I don't think it would work for the Major League Baseball or the NBA because it'd be perceived as being kind of gimmicky. But for the future of All-Star games, I just don't see it long-term. Short-term, it'll stick around, but I think the day's going to come when the broadcast networks or the rights holders, television rights holders, are going to go, we don't really want to show this. And it's going to bring in less and less money, and it's not going to the appeal is going to continue to go down and down and down to where one league's going to decide, we don't really need an all-star break anymore. And then another league's going to decide it, and then that'll be the end of it. It'll be now I may be wrong, but I just think that the days of the All-Star Game being a very important event are over with. They're a nice little footnote to the season, but I don't see the passion that you used to see in an All-Star game. You don't have the debates anymore of the intensity of the debates where who's an All-Star, who should not be an All-Star. Maybe some sports talk people may do that. Maybe the very passionate fans in the bars and the barbershops and the wherever may have those debates, but it's not like it once was. It's not with the intensity that it once was. And a lot of that is because there's so much of it out there. There's so much sports out there right now to actually watch on a regular basis. And there's a lot of other stuff to watch on a regular basis. So, sports is entertainment. It has competition from a lot more than ever before. So it has to find a way to keep it relevant. And if the All-Star game is looked as being kind of irrelevant, it's not going to stick around. So that's my little thing about that. As for LeBron James, I think he's right. There's really no need for it. I think the only reason they're wanting to have it is to basically make some money out of it because they're kind of desperate to kind of turn things around to where they don't have as big of a losses as they had last season, which is understandable. But if they're not going to watch, I mean, there's a lot going on in the world, and I think if it's a situation where you just have a one-day game, players come in, but then there's obviously the concern about it could be a super spreader, but you could put it in a very confined. There is a way to do it, but I really think that the NBA may decide to back off this at the end of all of this, because it's just, it may sound like a good idea, but I think when they do a cost benefit analysis, does it really benefit us to do this? I think they'll decide not to do it. So anyhow, all right. Well, that is the end of this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I am going to, for those of you who may look at the other, if I can talk, who may follow the other podcast, the politics and the post-pandemic era one will probably come sometime next week. I had to work today, that's why I didn't come, and plus I've got to work over the weekend. I'm not off again until Wednesday. So that might be the day we do it. The watch-alongs will have to be next week too, because I had to work. Basically, the job needs me to work, so I'm working. And there's always a chance that the snow could snow, So we'll see what happens. But anyhow, I'll keep, for those of you who follow it, I'll let you know about that. But other than that, that is it for this podcast. Excuse me, I didn't mean to do that. I just ate dinner. That's what happens when I do a podcast after dinner. Well, take it easy. Good night. Good luck. May the good news be yours.